I'm Natasha Kirchuk, and thanks for joining us from our studios in Israel. Coming up in today's newscast, Israel reportedly strikes Syria. Officials from Hamas and Hezbollah come together for a rare meeting. And we hope you're hungry because we've got a tasty treat for you. And I swear it's not fly larva. Just kidding, it is fly larva. Stay tuned for the latest news in Israel. Israeli jets are believed to have struck a Syrian weapons depot near the Syria-Lebanon border. Arabic media has reported massive explosions in the region, claiming they're from 4 Israeli airstrikes and that eyewitnesses have actually seen Israeli jets in the sky. Syria has immediately retaliated for the attack, launching anti-aircraft ballistics. At this time, no Israeli jets have been reported as hit, with the Syrian depot believed to be massively damaged beyond repair. The Israeli Prime Minister has issued a harsh warning following that counterattack, saying, "If anyone attempts to harm us, we will harm them back." This incident comes just a few weeks after Syria launched rockets at Israeli planes returning from a recon mission in Lebanon, actions that caused Israel to return fire and destroy the anti-aircraft batteries. Clearly, tensions are continuing to ramp up between Israel and Syria, especially now that both Iran and Hezbollah are in the mix. Now, this is pretty shocking. Hamas has just released new footage of Gilad Shalit, the Israeli soldier that they held in captivity for 5 whole years. Shalit was just 19 years old when he was captured by Palestinian militants from Hamas. His captors crossed into Israel from the Gaza Strip through an underground tunnel in June of 2006 and managed to infiltrate an IDF post. 2 Israeli soldiers were killed and another 2 were wounded in the ensuing battle, and Shalit was taken hostage. For 5 years, Israel tried its best to get Shalit released, but ultimately he was only let go in 2011 after Israel agreed to exchange 1,027 Palestinian prisoners for his freedom. The freshly released footage of Shalit shows his final moments before that final release. Hamas has revealed footage of the former Israeli hostage in the past, all of which is part of a Hamas documentary regarding the entire affair. The recent terror attack in New York City floored the country earlier this week after Uzbeki national Sayfullo Saipov rammed his car into a crowd of pedestrians, leaving 8 innocent people dead and at least 12 others injured. In the studio with me now to take a look at what we can expect to see next is Dr. Efraim Herrera, an expert on the subjects of Islam and jihad. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you too.
Now this was a tragic attack. What were your first impressions after you saw this on the news?
I think it almostly had to happen because it is the fruit of a calculated strategy developed by the ideologue of Islamic State, whose name is Abu Musa al-Suri. And he has developed the concept of a lonely wolf. He said, you know, you have information services in the West. So, well, if we have a centralized organization, they will dismantle it very quickly. So we have to develop this concept. You young Muslim in the States, in Europe, just read my instructions on the net. Look at the YouTube clips, and then you will learn that you have to kill these infidels, these crusaders.
So you know, many analysts are speculating that with ISIS, in Iraq and Syria on the outs, that they're going to try to stay more relevant by keeping up appearances like this lonely wolf attack. How are we supposed to prevent these attacks? What can be done?
To solve the problem, you have to define it. And the basic definition is that their concept of Islam is the aim is to conquer and to have a domination of Islam on all the world. And
so you're saying the religion as a whole?
That's the basis. It exists in the traditional Islam, and it has been renewed with the caliphate of ISIS. And then they say that the way is 2 stages. The first stage is to sow fear and panic in the hearts of West citizens.
So what do you expect to happen next?
It will happen again and again, because the methodology they implement is very easy. I would quote Adnani, who was a former spokesperson of Islamic State, and he said, if you can kill a disbelieving American or European or an Australian or Canadian, then rely upon Allah and kill him in any manner or anywhere, however, and it doesn't matter however it will be. And he say, run over him with your car, run over him with your car. And he gave many other solutions that it will happen. If the West doesn't do what Egypt and the Gulf countries have done, they forbid the teaching of Islam.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Efraim Herrera.
Thank you too.
Israel has just denied an American member of Amnesty International from entering Israel. The Interior Ministry has confirmed that the man, who is also of Palestinian descent, was blocked because of the BDS movement. ILTV's Aaron Porras is here with the details. Now, Aaron, is barring people entry to Israel, becoming more commonplace?
I wouldn't exactly call it commonplace, but it is happening. Ever since the government was given permission to ban entry to those supporting of BDS, there hardly a month has gone by where somebody hasn't been banned.
So if Israel does see BDS as a threat, doesn't it make more sense to allow BDS supporters to enter and then change their mind, or try to influence them and change their mind about Israel by showing them the true face of this country?
That's certainly an argument that a lot of critics of this law have made. Another argument says that this is just an excuse for the government to be able to ban anybody that they don't like from entering the country. But there hasn't really been any substantial, hard, objective evidence of that sort of abuse happening. There's a lot of subjective, views of that happening, but nothing hard and objectionable to say this is an abuse of power. That being said, what we have seen is Israel marking people who are pro-BDS as enemies of the state. And it's not that far-fetched to imagine a country saying, this is an enemy of the state, don't let him in. But I'll get more to the specifics of the Amnesty International member right now in the report.
The state passed a controversial law earlier this year banning foreign visitors from entering Israel who supported the BDS boycott of Israel or the settlements. But Amnesty International is saying their employee, Raed Jarar, was barred because of his work with their organization, documenting Israel's alleged human rights violations in the Palestinian territories. Amnesty maintains that it does not support the BDS movement nor any boycott of Israel, but only calls for an end to Israel's occupation of the disputed territories. Jarar was denied entry while trying to cross from Jordan into the West Bank to visit family after learning that his father had just passed away.
Some breaking news now. The Israeli-based news website Times of Israel has just apparently been hacked by pro-Palestinian Turkish activists. Now here's what readers found when they tried to log into the website. As you can see, the hacker's message features an image of the Turkish flag along with a translated quote from the Quran. There's also a line written in Turkish that seems to lay down the hacker's bottom line for a Palestine in Gaza. This is obviously the exact opposite of what readers were expecting to find. The Times of Israel covers news on Israel and the Middle East all over the world, and even publishes Arabic, French, Chinese, and Persian editions. But clearly, the Times has attracted a, let's call it, passionate Turkish audience as well. All right, now listen up, Apple addicts. The iPhone X is finally about to hit stores tomorrow, and while I'm sure you've already seen the ad campaign, you might not know that a lot of the new features on the iPhone X were actually developed right here in Israel.
You are my best friend and we've got some things to do.
On the floor.
Yeah.
Yo, you wanna meet me in the lounge.
Yeah.
Yo, you wanna meet me in the club.
Yeah.
Yo, you wanna meet me downtown.
Okay.
Tell us more is the CEO and founder of Apps Village, Max Bluvband. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So let's get started. What are some of the new features on this iPhone X or iPhone X as they call it?
Right, so indeed, this is the biggest announcement of Apple in the last 5 years, and I've picked for you 4 main features. First of all is the Face ID. Everyone is unlocking the iPhone with the fingerprint, and today or tomorrow
Now you
actually.
just put it up against your face.
Yeah. You look on the mobile and it unlocks. Okay, it's recognize your face. Now, if it's not your face, it will hide identification, so you will not see all identification.
And what's interesting is that part of that technology was actually developed right here in Israel, correct?
Right. So not only this, also the two other features, which is the camera. There's like a great upgrade in camera, which the front camera actually take an amazing portrait pictures. It's called the portrait mode. Okay. And the third one is the Animoji. Okay, which look on you pick an emoji that you want. Okay. You look on it, and it mimics your face expression. Then you can send it. So
you can essentially make an emoji through your facial expression. Is what you're trying to do. Okay.
You pick the banyo or something.
I think I might have to get my hands on this iPhone. All right. So I mean, we're running out of time, but if you could quickly tell us, how do you think iPhone technology is being changed by Israel, and why is there so much of these updates coming from this country?
Right. So first, the last 5 years, Apple acquired about 4 or 5 companies here. Most of them, the companies are focusing on the face recognition, the camera technologies, PrimeSense, real links, real face.
Well, so there's just a lot of work that is happening here. I mean, we know we're the startup capital, right? So it's no surprise that Apple is coming in and picking these Israeli companies up. Thank you so much for joining us and giving us a scoop on what we can expect out of this new iPhone.
Thank you.
All right, Israel has been under fire recently for allegedly selling weapons to Myanmar, an African country accused by the United Nations of textbook ethnic cleansing. But now French intelligence is reporting that Israel has finally discreetly and significantly halted all arms sales to Myanmar. ILTV's Brett Allen Smith is here with a story. Now, Brett, any word on why Israel made this call now?
Well, word is that this decision came directly at the request of the United States. But I think it's safe to say that Israel's been getting pressure from just about the entire world over suspected arms sales to Myanmar, a country, like you said, has been accused of horrific war crimes for a decade now. Things hit a breaking point last week when Myanmar posted pictures of its new naval arsenal on Facebook, which featured technology that was clearly Israeli in origin. Now, Israel doesn't comment on weapon sales, or either alleged or otherwise, but for most, these pictures were a pretty chilling confirmation that Israel had indeed sold military gear behind the world's back.
These reports now that Israel stopped selling arms to Myanmar altogether come from French intelligence. Is this reliable intel?
Well, for now, it's just one report, but I think we'll be seeing a clear picture in the coming weeks when people really start looking into this. But if it's true and Israel has halted all arms deals to Myanmar, it could be a major first in Israeli policy and probably a very welcome one at that, as you'll see now in the report.
French intelligence is reporting that Israeli Defense Minister Avigdor Lieberman has called for a freeze on all military sales licenses to Myanmar. This comes after fierce pressure from the international community, who have accused the African country of horrific ethnic cleansing of its Muslim minority. Rumors that Israeli weapons firms had gotten a government green light to sell to Myanmar also ignited protests from within the country as well. And things hit a fever pitch last week when Myanmar's Navy posted photos on Facebook featuring its fleet outfitted with advanced Israeli weapons tech. Details of Israeli military contracts to foreign countries are by policy kept under tight wraps. An Israeli court actually ruled on arms sales to Myanmar in September, but the decision was placed under gag order, unreleased to the public. Israel has denied any direct participation in ethnic cleansing campaigns carried out by Myanmar.
Today marks the 100-year anniversary of the Balfour Declaration, the British pledge to create a national homeland for the Jewish people in what was then known as British-mandated Palestine. Israelis and Palestinians have just commemorated the anniversary, but in very different ways. Britain's Balfour Declaration of 1917, though not a legally binding agreement, laid the foundation for what would eventually become the State of Israel.
The Balfour Declaration made it possible to lay the infrastructures which were needed for the establishment of Israel.
Prime Minister Netanyahu has just flown to London to celebrate the declaration's legacy with England's top leaders. For many Israelis, Balfour is the reason they have a Jewish state today, 100 years later.
The Palestinians say that the Balfour Declaration was a tragedy. That wasn't a tragedy. What's been tragic is their refusal to accept this 100 years later. I hope they change their mind, because if they do, we can move forward finally to making peace between our two peoples.
For Palestinians, however, the declaration marked a tragic turning point in their people's history, as the moment they believe they lost their homeland. That's why Palestinians are celebrating Balfour's legacy with protests in the streets, and President Mahmoud Abbas is threatening to sue England for making the declaration a century ago. Israel's a hot spot in the Middle East for tourism, which is why our hotels need to know how to decorate themselves properly. Well, here to tell us what's new in the world of hotel furniture and equipment is CEO of the Equip Hotel Supply Company, Israel Segal. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Now, this is not a topic that most of us think about, on a daily basis, but what would you say is the latest trend in furniture in the hotel business?
Well, I would say that the trends are focused on functionality, guest satisfaction, and design. In respect to functionality, you could see that bathtubs are already gone and you have big showers. You have much more light management in the room, that you can manage the lighting on off. Right. The writing desks are disappearing, and you have a dining table that you could either eat or use it as a desk. Linens, let's say decorative linens, are getting out because of mainly hygiene, and then you have the decorative linen. And for equipment, mainly it's in the food and beverage aspect.
Interesting.
The chefs are mainly focused on presentation, so they are using different style of dishes, and the all chefing dishes are getting
more basic, right? Yeah.
They are disappearing.
Now, this is interesting because, like I said, it's not something that we typically think about, but there's a lot of thought going into how to kind of save money and make sure that guests are happy, like you said, satisfied. So what companies does Equip represent and supply from? Okay,
we supply the whole scope of the hotel supply. Mm-hmm. It's called in the terminology FF&E and OS&E. Mainly the furnitures, who is a Turkish company, a worldwide company, mm-hmm. And equipment for, let's say, the major suppliers in the world, like Steelite, which are very famous for the porcelain.
Very interesting. Well, listen, for all of our viewers out there who have hotels or are interested in coming to visit this country, this is a man that you need to know, right? He has the scoop and all the information on what kind of trends you will want to see. All right, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
All right, 2 Hebrew charter schools in New York are about to take 33 excited students on one heck of a field trip, a 10-day visit to the Holy Land. The kids have spent grade school mastering Hebrew, studying Israeli history, and even brushing up on Israeli cuisine. But here's the thing, most of them aren't even Jewish. Hebrew Language Academy and Hatikva International Academy are 2 of New York's Hebrew charter schools. That's a big difference from Jewish day schools, which are private. Charter schools, on the other hand, are completely public and choose their students randomly every year with a lottery. That's why most of Hebrew Language Academy's students are of Caribbean and Haitian descent, and only about half are actually Jewish. But like a Jewish day school, the kids spend all year learning every aspect of Israeli culture and history, and speak flawless Hebrew. And now 33 8th graders are about to take the field trip of a lifetime, 10 days touring the country they've learned so much about. For many of these kids, it'll be their first time ever out of the country and their first time to practice their Hebrew with actual Israelis. It goes without saying, though, that mostly they're just excited to finally try that Israeli sabich they've heard so much about. Feeling hungry? Well, a new Israeli startup has an interesting new delicacy for you to try out, and it's super high in protein. The only thing is that it's, well, fruit fly larva. All right, relax. I've actually tried this stuff out myself, friends, and it's not as bad as it sounds. The Israeli startup Flying Spark has found a way to compress fruit fly larvae into a powder and oil extract that can be used to substitute meat. And the flavor? Nutty. It tastes nutty. Now, you obviously don't eat fruit fly powder straight up. It can be used to make pasta, bread, and even good old meatballs. And here's the good news. In insect protein, you get all the good stuff without the bad. Fruit flies munch on fruits and vegetables, so their nutritional value is very healthy. And they're excellent for the food industry. Why, you ask? Well, the little bugs have a short lifespan of 6 days and are super cheap and easy to cultivate. Plus, they don't cause any greenhouse gas pollution. ocean. Talk about sustainable. Flying Spark has already received some major recognition from industry giants like IKEA that want to add a protein boost to their food products. The main challenge for the startup is getting people to overcome the yuck factor, but the global market for these insects is expected to grow to over $46 million by 2023. I think I know where I'm going to invest my money. All right, now this is both intriguing and sad. For the first time ever, archaeologists have come across the remains of an Egyptian female in southern Israel, and it turns out she was pregnant. Historians have come across the 3,200-year-old remains in the Timna Valley, which is just adjacent to the ancient Egyptian temple in the area once known as King Solomon's Mines. Researchers have never come across female remains in the copper mines. In fact, the last time they came across any remains at all was back in 1964, making this finding extremely unusual. The area has a pretty inhospitable environment, and the lack of water resources has made it so that no one has ever settled permanently in the valley or buried corpses there. The woman who has just been discovered was likely in her 20s when she died, and researchers believe her baby was in its first trimester. The only clue that really allowed archaeologists to deduce information about her identity were 2 glass beads found in her tomb. Those beads link her back to the Egyptian goddess of Hathor, who was known to protect miners. The woman was likely a musician or singer who traveled to perform because her body was also found with the remains of musical instruments. All right, and up now, ILTV's Emmanuel Kadosh is here to tell us the top 5 fun facts about Israel.
There are so many fun facts about this tiny country we call Israel. Here are 5 fun facts you may have not known about the Holy Land. At number 1, it has been reported that Israel was the first country to pass a law banning underweight models. The law states that in order to get hired as models, men and women must be certified by a physician as having a body mass index of no less than 18.5. No, we are not the first country to promote a healthy body image, but we are the first to introduce it to legislation. Number 2, you may find shocking, but apparently Israel has the highest number of museums per capita in the world. With over 200 museums, you have your choice of experience. Art, science, history, design, you name it, we've probably got it. Number 3 is for all you tomato lovers out there. Cherry tomatoes were actually first cultivated by 2 Israeli professors from the Hebrew University Faculty of Agriculture. The cherry tomatoes add a lot of flavor to your salad, they ripen slowly, and they don't rot in shipment. Doesn't get much better than that. At number 4, most of you internationals are aware of, or should I say in love with, the coffee chain Starbucks. Well, they opened up a chain here in the Holy Land back in the day and shut down in 2003. What can I say? Israelis love their coffee, but they like it from the comfort of their favorite local cafe. Last but definitely not least, do any of you remember that time when instant messenger was a thing? Yeah? Well, it all started out as ICQ. The instant messaging program was developed by 5 Israeli computer geniuses. One thing led to the next, and AOL acquired the company for $407 million. At the time, the highest price ever paid for an Israeli tech company. And there you have it. That's all for today. Some fun facts you may have not known about the Holy Land. Stay tuned for our next top 5. Back to you.
Enroll in eTeacher's online Hebrew courses and quickly discover that it creates the deepest connection to Israel that you could ever imagine.
And now for our Hebrew word of the day. All right, my friends, this is not one of my preferred meals, but here in Israel, they love them, ktzitzot or meatballs. All right, so this is probably one of the hardest words you will ever have to pronounce in the Hebrew language. Ketzitza. Squish these sounds together and you get ketzitza. You should also know that ktzitzot refer to any type of food that is basically squished together into an edible ball or patty. I know you're probably wondering why on earth would anyone choose to make such a tasty dish so difficult to say? And here's my answer. I have no freaking idea. Just remember, miracles are like tzitzot or meatballs because nobody can agree exactly on what they're made of, where they come from, or how often they should appear. And on that note, let's go ahead and make sure it's not raining meatballs today. Here's a look at the weather forecast. Tonight will be partly cloudy with a drop in temperatures to a low of about 61 or 16 degrees Celsius. Over the weekend, the temperatures are expected to drop a bit more with light rain in the north and highs around 74 or 23 degrees Celsius. All right, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.51 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at iltv.tv. I'm Natasha Kirchuk, and thanks for watching.